Each week we're joined by the co-founder of Macro Business, macrobusiness.com.au. It's where we go for our economic news and commentary because we think it's the best. Leith Van Onselen, delighted to say, is on the line with a really important story that we will talk about in relation to manufacturing. Hello, Leith. Hope you're well, mate.
G'day, Luke. I'm well. How about yourself?
Yep, just doing fine. But when I read what you published through the week, and you would be talking about it today, this is a reminder to everyone how seriously we should take pleas from government or government policy saying, we're going to get manufacturing back. It's just all blah, 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 because the story of Oceania Glass is just damning, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, mate. So Australia has the smallest manufacturing share in the OECD. So that's all the 31 or so advanced nations. We've got the lowest share of our economy is manufacturing. It's been shrinking for decades, but it's started to shrink even more in recent years. So last year Australia lost its last major plastics manufacturer, Quinos. That shut down due to high energy costs. It's a heavy user of gas and electricity, etc., and the high costs basically sent it broke. And what it means is that Australia is now wholly reliant on importing plastics from China and other places. We used to be able to make some of our own. We can't anymore. This week, Australia's only architectural glass manufacturer, Oceania Glass, collapsed after 169 years of operation. Now, that company produced so architectural glass is like flat glass, windows, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And it's used in Australian homes and buildings. And interesting little factoid here, its glass was used in Parliament House. So Oceania Glass has announced its closing. Obviously, it uses a massive amount of energy, particularly gas, to power its 2,000-tonne furnace in Victoria. And obviously, the hyperinflation of gas and electricity prices and whatever has made it uncompetitive. So now that is shutting down, and so soon Australia is going to be importing all of our glass from China as well. Now, just to sort of segue this back a little bit to last week's discussion, I mentioned last week how Labor, in 2021, promised that Australians would save $275 on their residential power bills this year and nearly $400 by 2030. Well, I mentioned last week how that's, the cost of power is blown way above what they ever projected, which we all know.
Yeah.
But this week, Moody's, which is a ratings agency, they do heaps of research as well, they released an absolutely damning report, massive report. It was a detailed analysis highlighting the true cost of Australia's green energy transition. So Moody's projected that Australia would need to spend between 150 billion and 190 billion in today's dollars, so not accounting for inflation, over the next decade to basically meet its planned renewables rollout. And Moody's warned that these costs inevitably will be capitalised into our residential power bills and could raise energy costs by another 20 to 35% over the next decade in real terms. So it's not counting for inflation. So, basically, if we keep going with this renewables rollout, our energy costs are just going to keep rising 20 to 35%. It'll get worse because projected investment in renewables is projected to rise to between 200 billion and 250 billion in today's money by 2050 to complete the rollout. And because these renewables are intermittent and unreliable because they depend on the weather, so, depend on when the sun's shining, the wind's blowing, all that sort of stuff, and you can't forecast this stuff, and it's very unreliable and intermittent. Australia basically needs to build way more of it than you'd think to make sure that we're covered at all times. And Moody's also noted that gas-fired power generation is going to become increasingly important as we shut down coal and everything else, which is stable, to make up the shortfall for when renewables aren't running. But the problem here, Luke, as I mention all the time, is that we have a gas shortage on the East Coast. We export 75%, well, about close to 3/4 of it. Most of it goes to China. And we've got incredibly high gas prices, which, if we're going to become more reliant on gas to cover renewables, is a serious problem. And now we're getting to the stage where I think late this year in New South Wales, we built first import terminal of LNG comes online. There's going to be another one planned for Victoria and South Australia. And all that means is that our gas price is going to keep rising. It's going to rise to basically the international import price, which means that it's going to rocket even further, which means that the cost of covering our renewables is going to go up. So I think Moody's has actually been very conservative in its 20 to 35% cost increase, because all it's factoring in is the cost of transmission from these renewables, not factoring in the fact that we're going to become more reliant on gas and that the gas price is going to keep rising because now we're going to be importing gas, even though we export, loads of it. So all this basically means is that the upshot is that, this pig-headed pursuit of, closing down stable baseload generation that we've had for years, for decades, in favour of renewables is going to drive up prices. We're going to become more gas dependent. At the same time as we've got deepening gas shortages, we're going to be importing gas. All it means is that our manufacturing sector is going to keep shrinking. We're going to lose more industry. We're going to be importing more stuff that we used to make ourselves. Cost of living is going to keep rising, and we're going to have ongoing inflation shocks because our energy costs are just going to continue rising, both through moving towards the renewable transition, which requires absolutely unbelievable amounts of investment, which are going to get capitalised in your bills, and us becoming more reliant on gas, which is becoming more and more expensive. So Australia's got an abundance of energy. We've got oodles of coal, oodles of gas, oodles of sunlight. We should have the cheapest energy costs in the world, but through policy failure and this pig-headed pursuit of net zero, we're basically politicians have denied Australians cheap energy, and it's just going to keep getting worse.
They love saying that gas is a transitioning fuel, but when it comes to actually doing something about gas, because they've been involved with a fossil fuel, they back away at 1 million miles an hour. And I think you and I both said it, if you fix gas, you go close to fixing everything. And we've got states saying, we won't be trying to find gas onshore. We don't have gas reservation. They do in the West. It's a different game there. But tell listeners, if you had half a chance to get your hands on the levers of power, what would you do? What should the government do to fix the gas issue?
Yeah, so what I'd do automatically is I'd force a domestic reservation. So I'd set aside whatever we need to basically power ourselves first. I'd also you'd have to bolster up the north-south pipeline and also build some storage down south, because over winter when Victoria has high gas demand, the pipeline north-south it runs beyond capacity. So we need to have some. So basically, you'd build some storage facilities down south. You'd fill them up in the off-season summer to use in the winter. I'd also have a export levy on every tonne of gas that we export. You'd charge a levy on it so the Australians actually get a fair return on what we're exporting as well. And yes, this would anger the fossil fuel, the gas cartel. It'd probably anger China a bit as well. But may I remind people that especially now that Russia's invaded Ukraine and Russia's on the nose, China's now receiving Russian gas. They're also receiving our gas. They're getting more gas from us than they need, and they're actually reselling it for profit on the market. So I'd just cancel some Chinese gas contracts, and I'd declare force majeure, whereby basically the contracts get cancelled because of a change in government policy. Yes, that would anger China. It would obviously anger the companies here, but Australians need to come first here. Like, we are basically shooting ourselves in the foot. We've created an energy crisis. It's a two-faced problem. It's not just the gas market. It's also the fact that we're shutting down, cheap, reliable baseload power that's served us for generations in the pursuit of net zero as well. And then we're also spending a ton of money building out stuff that's pretty unreliable, which then ends up just getting capitalised into your power bills, which means we're going to be paying more. So, it's a multifaceted problem, but definitely the gas thing is number one thing that needs to be fixed. We need reservation. We also need to have more storage down south, and optimally, I'd also have export levies as well, or at least charge when the gas price gets above a certain level, like $7 a gigajoule or something, which is when the gas cartel makes egregious profits. You'd put a super profits type tax on it, so that Australians actually get some return from our exports, because at the moment we're getting a very, very poor return. In fact, a report came out this week, Luke. I'll just say it very quickly. That it was from the Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, an institute or something like that. They did a massive report on the LNG terminals in Queensland. They said that basically it's been a very poor investment for Australia. It's driven up domestic gas prices. We haven't got a decent return in terms of tax revenue. It's just basically been a policy disaster. And they said straight out that that the construction of these, I'm quoting here, the construction of these 3 LNG plants at Gladstone are textbook for what not to do. The clear winners out of this seem to be the gas consumers in Asia Pacific, particularly China. It's left a poor record domestically. So this report came out and said that this policy has been a disaster. So the government needs to basically, fix it.
Yeah, gosh, you just wish, don't you, that someone, and look, I understand the government can't do it because they've made such an enemy of fossil fuels, including gas. You just wish that someone wanting to become PM might say, you know what, this ends now. We're going to fix the gas problem. And goodness me, that would just have an immediate impact, you'd think, on all sections of the economy, and would stop us sending places like Oceania Glass to the wall so that we've got to buy glass from China. I mean, you just, oh, mate, it just drives you nuts.
It is so ridiculous. Like, Australia basically, we're being told we can't burn our own coal and gas, but we send that same coal and gas to China to burn instead. So they burn it anyway. And as a result, our manufacturing then shifts to China, who makes the manufacturing instead. So it's net for emissions. It's actually not better for the world because all we're doing is shifting our emissions from Australia to China. And I'd argue that China probably burns it in a less clean way than we would because there's less controls.
Of course they do. Macrobusiness.com.au. Good to chat, my friend. Talk to you in a week.
Yeah, cheers, Luke. Speak next time.
Thank you. Leith Van Onselen, making absolute sense again.
Polestar.